Welcome to the Rebel Souls podcast, where we flip the middle finger to the status quo. I'm your host, Shelley Paxton, lifelong rebel, liberator of souls, and author of Soulbbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life. Settle in as we dive deep with badass leaders who are rebelling for what matters most in life, business, and the world at large. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get this revolution started. Before we begin, I want to share an offering from my soul to yours. If you've achieved traditional success only to realize that you're living someone else's dream, then this will start you on a profound journey toward becoming chief soul officer of your own life, just like I did. I'm gifting you a free chapter from my book, Soulbbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life. It's called Liberating from the Shackles of Should. And if you're ready to, then visit soulbbatical.com to download it for free. That's SOULBBATICAL.com. Warning, side effects include intense joy and fulfillment. Welcome, Rebel Soul fam. I'm so excited to have you guys here. And this is my very first solo episode. So this feels really special. This feels like a milestone moment. And while I have to admit, I really wanted to do a podcast because I'm so excited about the incredible, just badass leaders and creatives and entrepreneurs that I have been interviewing and that I get to continue to interview. So secretly, that's why I'm doing this, because I love having those conversations. They're so inspiring and so insightful, and I love sharing them with you. However, I also know that there's value in me sharing a little bit more of me and my journey and what's on my mind and what I'm rebelling for in my life. So that's what this is all about, these solo episodes. They're little interstitials, little palate cleansers in between the interviews. So I hope you love them. And I thought it would be appropriate to start this first one with a little bit of the backstory. So as you may have figured out by now, and if you haven't, it will come to you very quickly. My signature question on this podcast is, what are you rebelling for? And that's different than how we typically talk about rebelling or how we're used to thinking about rebels, right? So, rebel for a cause, rebel, what is it? Rebelling, rebels. I'm trying to think of the James Dean thing, you guys, and my mind just went blank. Anyway, usually we think about rebels in terms of rebelling against, right? It's sort of like the black leather, the, middle fingers, all of that. And while I totally want to claim and reclaim some of that in the spirit and the attitude of what I'm putting into the world and what I hope you guys are picking up and also bringing into your lives, I had a major epiphany as I went on this Soulbbatical journey. So that's what I want to talk about as some context. So for those of you who are watching the video of this, this is my book. If you have not read it, Soulbbatical, a corporate rebel's guide to finding your best life. For those of you who are just listening, I am holding up a much dog-eared and version of my copy of my book that also has lots and lots of orange Post-it notes with little reminders to myself about some yummy stuff in there. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is as I went on this journey, I was really wrestling with this idea of rebel. And it suddenly became really clear to me as I was going through all these stories and I was thinking about my childhood, like I shot out of the womb as a rebel. As some of you may have heard me say before, I literally was a rebel from the time I was born. I was rebelling against my parents, tradition, religion, authority of all kinds. I mean, you name it. And I was just like, don't want that. Do not tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. all of the things. And I'm guessing that some of you can relate to that. And I'm kind of chuckling as I think about it. And I hope you are smiling as well in acknowledgement of like, oh yeah, okay. Well, welcome home. You're in the right place. These are our people, right? This is why I want to get this revolution started, because here's the epiphany, you guys. The epiphany for me was like rebelling against was actually my armor. Rebelling against in so many ways, even me rebelling against what a traditional corporate career looked like. I spent 26 years in the corporate world working for these incredible brands. The pinnacle of my marketing career was at Harley-Davidson, like sexiest job in the marketing world for sure, most iconic brand on the planet, one that people tattoo on their bodies. And there's so much I loved about that because it totally amped up my badass reputation, right? It just, it sort of rubbed off on my vibe in the world. And yet I was still rebelling against traditional everything. I was saying, well, you know what? I can still be in the corporate world and do this differently and do it my way. And do it in a way where I can rock a leather jacket and a t-shirt and skinny jeans and high heels and a pierced nose in the boardroom. Fuck yeah, that's what I can do. And when I started to realize as I was mining my story is that was still my armor. That was still me, really, the leather and everything else was me protecting myself. Because you know what I didn't want anybody to know? I didn't want anybody to know that on the inside, I was insecure. I had big time imposter syndrome. And even more than that, and I think this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, I didn't want anybody to know that inside this kind of like confident, tough exterior that I've exuded for my entire life, that I'm really ooey gooey and soft in the center. I'm like, what were those candies when some of us were growing up? I'll admit I'm older than maybe some of you who are listening to this. There's like Rolos, right? So there's like chocolate on the outside, and then when you bite into it, it's just like ooey gooey caramel that just oozes into your mouth. That's it. That's what I'm like on the inside. And now I want to say that out loud because I think it's really beautiful to celebrate the softness and to celebrate the paradox that you can have this kind of, this kind of edgy exterior and this really soft and beautiful interior. And for so long, I was afraid. I thought that was a weakness. I didn't want to share it. And so as I was writing the book and getting really vulnerable, for those of you who've read the book, telling this very vulnerable story, the dark and the light and everything in between about the journey that I've gone on, I realized now I want to celebrate that. And so suddenly I'm like, but wait a second, how do I do that in a way that I don't lose this rebel aspect of myself? Because I really, truly believe that is a part of my identity, but maybe it looks different. And then I had the epiphany. And the epiphany was, what if I'm not rebelling against anymore? Because rebelling against is exhausting. You see all these brick walls behind me. For those of you watching video, it's like I was banging my head on the brick wall constantly, rebelling against. I know many of you can relate to this. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. What if it's about rebelling for? What if it's going from rebelling against, which is an armor, to rebelling for, which is a superpower? And I feel like that unleashed everything within me. It gave me the strength to write this book. It's giving me the strength to do this podcast and to put what I put myself, my authentic and courageous self, out into the world, because I'm reminding myself that this is my superpower and that this can be anybody's superpower. And it just literally, I have goosebumps. And I'm wearing my favorite Harley t-shirt. I don't know if anybody can, well, for those of you on video, if you can see it, freedom isn't quiet. I posted this on my Instagram feed the other day. And that's how I feel. Rebelling for isn't quiet. It's really powerful because I think of rebelling for in the sense of rebelling for who we are. That's authenticity. What we want, that's the courage to create your life in the way that you envision it, in the way that you want it, and the impact we want to have in the world. And that's your purpose. That's your mission. Or maybe it's simply your passion, because purpose and mission can feel overwhelming. And I know in future conversations, we'll get into that. So think about it. This is the premise, you guys, rebelling for who we are, what we want, and the impact we want to have in the world. That's the shift. That's the new paradigm. And I'm basing so much of my content and also this entire podcast on that question. What are you rebelling for? And I'm going to introduce you to some incredible humans who, in so many different aspects of life and in the world and industry and all the things, are rebelling for positivity, are rebelling for grace, are rebelling for health, are rebelling for midlife metamorphosis, are rebelling for love. I mean, it's incredible. And I could go on and on and on. And I can't wait to introduce you guys to all of these people. It feels like such an honor. Anyway, I wanted to establish that. So that's the premise on which so much of this podcast will be built. And I want you guys to be thinking about it. In my outro for, the little clip at the end of each one of these episodes, you'll hear me say, like, never stop asking yourself, what am I rebelling for? And be willing to get vulnerable, be willing to share your insides. So for me, this is what it is. I'm rebelling for the liberation of 1 billion souls. Yeah, 1 billion. And I can't do that on my own, which is why I not only wanted to write the book, but I wanted to start this conversation through a podcast. So more and more of us are doing this because it's really about the ripple effect. I remember the first time that I read what I'm about to read you guys. I'm going to end this segment with a Rebel Leader's Manifesto that I wrote. And I will never forget the first time I shared this publicly. It was 2 days after I wrote it. And it literally, the ink was still fresh. And I presented it to 150 coaches, consultants, and corporate leaders who were on a Zoom call. So we were doing this virtually during the pandemic. And I just decided to go for it. And it felt like the most vulnerable thing I've ever done, like putting my heart and soul out just to inspire people and to get a reaction and see, is there something here? And the reaction I got was overwhelmingly positive, everybody leaning in. And so many people said, you have put words to what I've been feeling, and I didn't know how to describe it to anybody. Thank you. And so, man, it still makes me emotional just thinking about that moment. And so one of the things that came up in that moment, this woman, Amina, said in the chat, she said, you have redefined ROI. So for those of us who are business people, which I'm guessing a lot of you listening to this and watching this are, we're used to ROI standing for return on investment, right? Very traditional, like these are the dollars I invested and this is what I got back. And sometimes it's not always dollars, right? But I want us to start thinking in terms of impact. And you'll hear it in this manifesto. And in the impact, I've talked about the ripples that become the waves. I'm not just talking about those billion souls because I know I can't do that on my own. What I want to do is be touching one soul at a time who's then living this way and becoming a beacon and a lighthouse for rebelling for. And more of the world is seeing that. And Amina responded, you have just You have just created a new ROI, ripples of impact. And I was just like, boom, that's it. So you guys, as we're all out in the world, let's think of the work that we're doing when we're rebelling for whatever we're rebelling for. Think about the impact you're having, because it's not always about the money. Money is another form of energy. This is about how can we make a difference, first for ourselves and then in what we're sharing with the world. And it does require authenticity and vulnerability and courage. And it is the most rewarding ROI ever, at least that I've personally ever experienced. So I want you guys to have that. So rebel for and a new ROI, ripples of impact. And I'm going to leave you with the final piece of our foundation for this podcast. I felt like this would be literally for the entire podcast. I think this is something that I want you guys to all be thinking about. So this is a Rebel Leader's Manifesto. And I encourage you, if you're not driving or running or operating heavy machinery, to just close your eyes and listen to me read this. And if you love it, if it stirs your soul, if you feel it in your bones, you can go to my website, soulbbatical.com, and you can find the Rebel Leaders Manifesto under Soul Fuel. And you can print it out and just have it as your own manifesto that sits next to you and reminds you, and you'll hear Rebel for in this as well. So here we go. A Rebel Leaders Manifesto before I leave you. We are powerful motherfuckers. We are the leaders of a revolution to bring more humanity to leadership and culture, to celebrate each and every one of us as human beings, not human doings, and to show up every day with more authenticity and courage and compassion for ourselves and others. Our collective impact is a powerful force for change. We are the ripples that become the wave. We see the light because we've experienced the dark. We've been burned out, stressed out, and checked out. We've watched our boundaries fall and our cortisol rise. We've soldiered through pain, illness, addiction, and not enoughness to get the job done. We've sacrificed our well-being and our weekends. We've played the dangerous games of I should and I'll be happy when. We've stopped listening to the wisdom of our souls, and we've paid the price. But we now know better. We know that we are the soul of business, that our greatest impact in the world comes from the belief that we can rewrite the script of success by creating thriving cultures that are wholehearted, courageous, and humans first. Ones that flip the middle finger to the rules and expectations no longer serving us in favor of these powerful new agreements that do. Number one, we are rebelling for, not against, for who we are, what we believe in, and the impact we want to have in the world. We are chief soul officers of our lives, and this is our superpower. Number two, we are forging the path, not following it. If the path before us is clear, we're on someone else's, period. Number three, we are successful, not success empty. Success and fulfillment are not mutually exclusive, and self-worth trumps net worth every day of the week. Number four, we own that authenticity is the truest form of rebellion. Our truth is our power. Number five, we are modeling radical self-commitment and putting self-care on the C-suite agenda. Number six, we are flipping the time off script, acknowledging that time off is a prerequisite for powerful work, not a payoff for hard work that often goes unused. Number seven, we are choosing soul over salary because we know that one leads to the other anyway. And number eight, we are living fully aligned and integrated lives as game changers, culture creators, and movement makers. Now is the time to awaken the rebel within each of us, within all of us. What are you ready to rebel for? Whew, I get all worked up every time I read that. So I'm going to leave you guys with that today. So this is all about learning the concept of rebelling for, and I just want you to sit and think about, what does that mean in your life? What are you ready to rebel for? What are you already rebelling for? How can you dial that up in your life? And I'm talking one life, you guys. One of the things that I know I'll talk about on one of these solo episodes is, I don't think about, oh, here's your work life on one side and your personal life on the other side. We live one integrated, holistic life aligned with our values. So what does that aligned life look like for you? And what are you rebelling for within that aligned life and within that purpose? So I'm giving you all a big virtual hug, and I can't wait to talk to you next time. These are going to drop every Monday, and I'm going to alternate interview episodes with solo episodes. And so much more to come. We're just starting to dive into the deep end together. I love you, Rebel Souls. Take care. Bye. Hey, Rebel. Thanks for listening. If you were inspired by what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review so our fellow Rebel Souls can find us. We have big work to do together. And if you want to dive deeper, head on over to my website at soulbbatical.com and follow me at Soulbbatical on Instagram. Until next time, stay bold, brave, and badass, and never stop asking, what am I rebelling for?